There's a lot of armed conflict in the world right now, but it's fair to say that some conflicts get more attention than others. I mean, certainly in the British news, the biggest focus is on the wars in Ukraine and in Gaza. And that's understandable because they're extremely costly conflicts. I mean, it's been reported that Russian casualties in Ukraine have surpassed 70,000, and it's no secret that thousands and thousands of Ukrainian civilians and soldiers have died. And the war in the Near East is escalating with the situation in Lebanon. So it's understandable that those conflicts get attention, but there are other wars going on in the world. Sudan is a big one, Burma is a big one. Um, and then there's lots of other conflicts around the place. I'm going to be talking about West Africa in this video, but there's also the Mexican drug war, a violent clash within the Sinaloa cartel in the last week left 30 dead. Um, I'm only scratching the surface. There's a lot of other so-called low-level conflicts going on around the world. So one could be forgiven for thinking the world's quite a chaotic place. And then you have frictions going on between countries that aren't at this point wars, but nevertheless could be serious. For example, between China and the Philippines. Um, so, it could be depressing. It looks like we're in a chaotic world. But one of the regions that I think is important, and it's not so much one conflict, but a lot of overlapping conflicts, is West Africa collectively as a region. Yet another attack in the last 24 hours, this time in Mali. I'm going to read out the BBC report. Um, but the figures are rising. I remember in the 2000s, West Africa was never peaceful. There was always some degree of instability and Islamist activity there, but it does seem to have escalated in recent years. Um, so if we look at countries like Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, Chad, Northwest Nigeria, and Algeria, there's a lot of overlapping conflicts going on there, particularly in Mali and Burkina Faso. So I'm going to read out this BBC report. It's by Widali Chibelushi, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Paul G, that's Njie. An Al-Qaeda linked group has said it was behind an early morning attack in the Malian capital Bamako. This is from, actually I should say it's from the 17th of September, not today. Armed men targeting a military training school and other areas in the city, the authorities said, blaming a group of terrorists for the assault. Jihadist group Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin, that's JNIM, claimed responsibility, saying it inflicted heavy human and material losses. The attack was the first of its kind uh, in years to hit Bamako. Um, Before Tuesday, the city had largely avoided the Islamist insurgency that had racked Mali for more than a decade. Although I do recall in 2015 there was a violent and bloody hotel attack in Bamako. Bamako is one of the fastest growing cities in West Africa. Its population estimates range from about 3 million to 4.5 million. JNIM is considered to be one of the most active militant groups in the wider Sahel region, having staged numerous attacks in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. It had special operation on Tuesday it said special operation on Tuesday struck both the training centre and Bamako's military airport, leading to casualties on the military's behalf. The New York Times also reported losses. Members of Mali's security forces told the US paper several officers have been killed or injured. The sources also said that a dozen ambulances had carried the troops to hospital. The government did not mention any such losses, but said the military training school was among a number of sensitive points targeted by terrorist attacks at dawn. A military statement issued at about 8 a.m. local time said the situation was under control, while a statement from Security Ministry said residents could go about their business as normal. AFP news agency there reported heavy exchanges of fire taking place in the early afternoon near a police station controlling access to the civilian airport terminal. At a similar time, JNIM, said that it had taken complete control of the nearby military airport. the BBC has not been able to verify this claim. Earlier, Mali's state television channel broadcast footage appearing to show roughly 20 prisoners. The men all had blindfolds on and their wrists tied. The terrorists have been neutralised, the sweep is continuing, Army Chief of Staff Omar Diarra said during the ORTM news report. The news report also showed footage of three unmoving bodies laying on the ground. International organisations such as the UN have reportedly advised their staff to restrict their movement. Videos posted earlier on social media showed black plumes of smoke rising from a part of the city. As shots rang out, people heading to the mosque for morning prayers had to turn back, news agency Reuters said. Bamako's Modibo Keita International Airport was closed following an attack. The military seized power in a coup in 2021, accusing the government of failing to do enough to quell the insurgency. The junta expelled French troops and UN peacekeepers and brought in Russia's Wagner Group to help fight the jihadists, but there's no sign of the insurgency ending. And recently there's been tensions between Bamako and Kiev over Ukraine's um, over allegations against Ukraine that they have supported violence in the country. Russia has its grubby fingers in West Africa, and one of the signs of that is the Wagner Group. I just find it ironic that Malian civilians, Burkina civilians are suffering, and they think that a Russian state terrorist group like the Wagner Group are somehow liberators. It's perverse. Um, so, in another Al Jazeera report, that was the BBC, this is talking about the Burkina Faso attack. I've just been talking about the events in Mali. This is in Burkina Faso last week, I believe. Just get the date correct, the 26th of August, so actually last month. But with half the country not under government control, Al Qaeda affiliate JNIM, again this group, is increasingly targeting civilians. And this report's by Shola Lawal. I'll just read a little bit of it. Around 200 people have been killed and 140 injured in the Burkinabe town of Barcelogo, the latest in a long line of deadly attacks by an Al-Qaeda linked armed group, Jamaat at Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin (JNIM). Women and children were among those killed on Saturday. Barcelona lies near the town of Kaya, a strategic point in north central Burkina Faso that houses the last standing military force between JNIM fighters and the capital Ouagadougou. Several soldiers are missing after the attack, which was carried out as JNIM continues to advance and seize its territory in the troubled West African country. So this is chaos. Those countries really are in a bad way. And I'm not making this video to sort of offer any solutions, but I'm just putting it out there because the number of dead is escalating, it seems. I've sort of been following these conflicts on and off in the background, but that's the thing, they've long been background stories. There's always been more focus on other conflicts, whether it be Syria or Ukraine or Israel and its neighbours. It's kind of taken a back seat, but this is escalating. In the 2000s, you'd get the occasional attack and there was violence, but we're seeing the atrocities that, not to be blunt about it, but the body count is building. In that part of Africa, the conflict in Nigeria, the Boko Haram insurgency to the north, has long been extremely violent. Boko Haram has been named as the world's most dangerous terrorist organization, even outflanking Al Qaeda and ISIS in brutality. But there's all sorts of Islamist offshoots around the world. JNIM maybe seem to be trying to catch up with Boko Haram and ISIS for sheer brutality. It's awful. But I think it reiterates a few things. It reiterates the volatility of this region. It reiterates, let's call it, great power games between Russia and the West, and how extremely important it is to win hearts and minds. France has been struggling there in that regard. Remember, these are often former French colonies. Russia doesn't have that baggage, although I hope Malian people and Burkinabe people can see the truth about what Russia's doing in Ukraine if they really think Russia is a liberator. But I don't offer any, it's an incredibly complex situation. I don't have any quick fix to this. It also reiterates the extremely violent face of pan-Islamism. I would say more than any other ideology in this world, pan-Islamism except for perhaps Russian nationalism. Pan-Islamism causes death and misery. It absolutely must be confronted and opposed wherever it is. And it's why in Europe we need to be honest about it. So, West Africa is a tinderbox, and it's the people of Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, Chad, northwest Nigeria that are long suffering this. I hope the situation can de-escalate, but it seems to only be getting worse. So anyway, I'm just putting this video out there because coverage is a big thing, and it doesn't get the same extent of coverage as other conflicts. I mean, if you had a terrorist attack, let's face it, if you had a terrorist attack in Rome or Paris or Chicago in which 70 people died, it would be a massive story. But this part of the world, unfortunately, it's almost like a desensitization. But this isn't just soldiers and Islamists, this is civilians as well. So I think it deserves more attention. Of course, it has to be said,